So yeah, but I wanted to also look at this article. Um, a concrete definition of an AI agent. Norman Nielsen Group has written this, and I don't know what an AI agent is, and I assume that that is what this article is about. Um, and that's really good for me to have that a real definition of what an AI agent is. So that and I think if we can get some clarity into what an AI agent really is, then we can start talking about designing and building them. So let's see if this definition of an AI agent is to our liking. All right. Summary. An AI agent pursues a goal by iteratively taking actions, evaluating progress, and deciding next steps. Useful agents must be reliable, adaptive, and accurate. Okay, fair enough. Can it be, though? But that's a different question. The word agent is being applied to everything. There are agents in your phone, your company Slack, your Notion, and your banking app. There are agents sending hate mail, deleting email inboxes. Agents has become a diffuse, ambiguous term that means everything and nothing. I mean, I think agent to me is a little bit different. Just looking at their summary, it's not only about taking action, it's also about having real control and doing things in the problem space that we have defined. In the space that we have defined for the agent to solve a problem, it needs to have control over that realm. So if we want an agent to go and buy something, which is really scary to me, I would never don't do that. But then we would have to give them access to some form of payment and also a clear description of what we wanted to buy. So if that's the problem that it's solving, it also needs to have control over some form of transactional method. So your bank account or your credit card. Yeah, so let's continue. There are agents sending hate mail, deleting email inboxes. Agent has become a diffuse, ambiguous term that means everything and nothing. And I mean, that sort of ties back to my feeling of what an agent is. I have no idea. So this is a problem. Without a clear definition, practitioners can't evaluate what they're working with or decide whether to trust it. Marketing, sales, engineering, product, and leadership each have a separate definition of what an AI agent is supposed to be. Some of these definitions are grounded in real-world use cases, but most of them float amidst hype and hope. Instead, we at Norman Nielsen Group, blah, 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 better experience for their users. Okay, let's see what you have here. What is an AI agent? An AI agent is a system that pursues a goal by iteratively taking actions, evaluating progress, and deciding on its own next step. Okay, let's break this down. Pursues a goal. An AI agent works towards some end condition. The goal might be specific. Fix this failing test, or open-ended. Research competitors in the European market and summarize the findings. What matters is the agent has a target to work towards, something that shapes with actions it takes and how it evaluates progress. So, complete research reports based on a set of sources, resolve a software bug, navigate a passenger. I mean, yeah, my problem is not with this, it's the reliability, but yeah, let's continue. Iteratively. Agents build on their previous work using the results of previous steps to make progress. Okay. I mean, that is interesting. Basically, we're saying that for it to be an agent, it can't just be a chat interface. It needs to have some sort of autonomy and progress without user input. I think user input should be in this sentence. Yeah. Making multiple analysis passes on an interview transcript, revising a rough draft of a report. But you're losing so much control, right? Probably if you have set up an AI that makes multiple analysis passes on an interview transcript, you've probably been in the interview, but you've probably transcripted the interview using an AI. So you've been talking to the person, and then some sort of copilot or something has transcribed what's been said in that interview. And then you're also having the AI doing this analysis. I guess if you do a lot of interviews, I can see this being really relevant. But say you do 20 interviews, it takes a lot of time. I don't know that I would trust an AI to do the analysis. Maybe if I also did it in parallel. So if I took notes and then I took notes on my own and I did analysis on my own, and then I also did this agent thing where it does multiple passes and analysis. That's the thing, right? It doesn't just pick out things for you to analyze. It actually does the analysis for you. Yeah. I mean, you're losing a lot of control. I don't know if this is your main job, like doing interviews, and which you could argue is my job, doing interviews and analyzing that. You're sort of in a little bit of a deep waters here, and I suspect this to be true for many tasks, that you just let an agent iteratively do something. You're losing a ton of control, and I guess you have to ask yourself, are you okay with losing that control? And if you are, that's fine. Taking actions. Agents act on their environment. Most current AI agents perform digital actions, searching the web, writing code, creating or editing documents, and updating databases. But the capability to act is not limited to the digital world. A self-driving car acts by steering, accelerating, and braking. A humanoid robot acts by manipulating physical objects. As AI agents expand to new domains, the range of possible actions will grow, from managing files to navigating physical spaces to operating equipment. In the agentic process, these actions are considered distinct steps from thinking or communicating with the users. Okay, I think it's interesting that they mix this with the physical space. It's sort of, that brings its own set of problems that is very hard to sort of leave. I think we kind of have to talk about some of the problems. I'm not going to go into all of the problems with sort of doing autonomous things in the physical environment, but if you have an environment that isn't separated from people, you're gonna run into problems. And I was thinking about this the other day. Why is it that let's assume, I don't have any numbers on this, but let's assume that Tesla's autopilot is more secure than human drivers in the conditions where they have been driving up until now. Let's assume that it's more safe. Still, there are accidents involving Tesla's self-driving cars. And the problem here is the responsibility aspect. If I crash into something with my car, everyone knows who is responsible. That's going to be me. But every time something happens with the Tesla, it's sort of mixed responsibility between Tesla, the company, and the driver. There was one driver that I don't remember what that person did, but it ended up being a shared responsibility between the Tesla and the driver. I think they fell asleep, or they were looking at they were trying to pick something up from between under their seat, I think. But then there's also the public perception. People are much more willing to be hit by a car driven by a person as compared to driven by a company, an AI agent. It's a whole other sort of set of problems. I would have probably preferred if they left that out of this article. But searching the web, accessing a database, right? Accessing a database. Yeah. I don't know if I want necessarily an AI to do that. Accessing a database, yeah, I guess you could, but when do you want that? I would maybe want an agent to build a dashboard to visualize some data, but just accessing the database seems like a very sort of narrow case for an agent when we're talking about agents in this context of agents doing multiple steps. Just accessing a database is such a weird end goal for anything. I don't like this this section taking actions. Yeah, okay. Accessing a database in order to build a dashboard to see some information. Okay, fair enough. Evaluating progress. A key aspect of an agentic process is reviewing completed and remaining work. This is often done by comparing against a plan and task list. So is this where you have control over an agent? I've never used an agent. But is this where you can check how that the agent is trying to achieve the goal that I wanted to achieve? Is you sort of sign off on the to-do list or the checklist, and then you get reports from it. I mean, that makes sense. Sort of a managerial position. Instead of me doing stuff, I get reports back. Sure, that's probably very good for an agent to do that. I kind of agree with this. Evaluating progress. Deciding its own next step. AI agents determine the next set of actions that are needed to make progress towards the goal they're pursuing. In this way, AI agents are self-directed and their path towards a goal is self-determined. This is in contrast to an LLM, which follows a single or set of predetermined rigid steps in a process. In contrast to an LLM, I'm sort of nitpicking the words here, but I think if you're writing an article that is only a definition of words, it kind of matters. It's not in contrast to an LLM. It's using LLMs to do more stuff. It's not something different. It is, in fact, still an LLM, maybe with a wrapper of something else on top of it, but yeah. Taking another pass on a slide deck to polish it, adding an additional software test, conducting a web search to improve a report. I mean, this only works if it can. It doesn't only work, but it works if the AI can sort of define that. Okay, so now I'm done. But if you can't do that, it's just statistics. It's just a random. Basically, this is how I interpret it. And the technology, basically, it says to itself, "Am I done?" And then it rolls a die. And if it's 1, 2, 3, it says, "No, I'm not done. I need to reiterate this." And if it's 4 to 6, it says, yeah, this is fantastic. Let's just keep it as it is. I kind of get, yeah, I sound very skeptic, but I would love this to work. But how secure can we be that it's doing what we want it to do in contrast to just doing random stuff? Yeah. Okay. Other agent capabilities implied by our definition. Some definitions of agents emphasize additional properties, the ability to perceive an environment, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this does not mean that any system capable of self-reflection is an agent. Self-reflection. An LLM that reflects on its own output is performing a form of evaluation. Again, I don't like the language in this article. Self-reflection is anthropomorphizing. It's not self-reflection. It is maybe some sort of task evaluation. But let's not get stuck on that. I don't need to harp on that anymore. But it is not self-reflection. It is something else. They mean something else. But this is a bit sloppy. I would prefer if they were more precise in what they're writing. Memory, we keep these properties implicit, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, is an LLM an AI agent? If you ask a typical AI-based chatbot a question and it responds, you're using a large language model, not an agent. The LLM receives your input, generated text and stopped. There was no iteration, no action beyond producing a reply, and no self-directing next step. And an LLM is a reasoning engine. It's a statistical text creation engine. An agent is a system built around a reasoning engine. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's an agent is a system built around a statistical language generator. The distinction lies in what surrounds the model, tools it can use, action it can take, and the loop that lets it evaluate its own work and decide what to do next. When an LLM is placed inside that loop, with access to tools like web search, file creation, and or code execution, it can become the core of an agent. But the LLM alone is not the agent. Sure. Sure. Most AI agents in 2026 are built on large language models, but the definition does not require one. A self-driving car like a Waymo vehicle meets our definition of an AI agent. It pursues a goal, takes actions, evaluates progress, and decides on its next step. Yet it runs on computer vision and planning systems, not an LLM. What matters is the behavior pattern, not the underlying technology. I think I like that. I think, I'm not sure. The definition becomes very broad. A self-driving car is also not a reasoning engine. So if the agent definition up here is based on what is a reasoning engine or not, yeah. To make the distinction between an AI chatbot between an agent and AI chatbot concrete, consider two real responses to the same request. A user asked an AI tool to log into Aloglia, a search analytics dashboard. Download the most popular searches from the past month and export the searches that returned 0 results. Okay, so the user does that. The chatbot understood the request. It knew what Algolia was, what the user wanted, and how to get there. But it stopped there. It described the steps and handed it back to the user. The AI agent attempted the work itself. It navigated the dashboard, clicked the analytics view, tried to change the date range, failed, adjusted its approach, and tried again. Each of those steps was a decision the agent made based on what happened so far. The cycle of acting, evaluating, and deciding what to do next is the difference between an AI tool that tells you how an AI agent and an AI agent that tries to do it for you. Okay. So basically what they're saying here is that it's getting harder to just find that the AI tools that we are using is sort of shifting towards becoming agents. You can see that if you use Claude, it tries to do things in this way that they're describing with reasoning. Okay, agents are defined by self-direction and capability to act. I think that's fairly well explained. Let's see if they have some. An AI agent is worth using if it delivers faster or higher quality results than the alternative, provided that the saved effort justifies the usage costs. Ideally, the results would be both produced more quickly and of better quality than before. If you're using an AI agent that doesn't meet either of these requirements, then you should set it aside. I mean, yeah, use the better tool, use the tool that does the thing and does it cheaply. However, it's often hard to know if something is actually better or just shiny and new. Ideally, you should be able to compare it to a gold standard. If that is not possible, which I assume that it's not, focus on the subjective experience of using the agent. Does it feel faster, easier, or of higher quality than previous tools? Yes, but that is also a very passive approach to these tools. If it feels good, then the quality is good. I think this is the sort of thinking that that leads to Deloitte. They did a lot of references to studies that don't exist. I think this is a very lazy approach, a very, very lazy approach to this. Does it feel like higher quality? I mean, that's the whole point of these tools, is it feels like it is telling you something that is true, but just very high confidence language doesn't mean that it's useful. Okay, so they're saying just because something is an agent doesn't mean it's useful. I agree, but I don't think I agree because of the reasons that they outline. For UX practitioners, the question is this agent worth using translates directly into design and evaluation work. If you're building an agent-powered feature, test whether it actually outperforms the non-agentic version of the same workflow. If you're evaluating an agent someone else built, watch real users interact with it. Where do they lose trust, have to correct, or give up? Research can tell you whether it belongs in your product. Yeah. Sure, I think you have to understand the technology a little bit, maybe more than Norman Nielsen Group does, or the author. Here at Norman, we continue to build these definitions. Yeah, okay, that's good. So, my conclusion, I think it is very, very important when you're doing this type of definition work that you don't do this anthropomorphizing, this sort of sliding values of not really defining whether this is statistical engine or whether it's a reasoning engine. I think reasoning engine is also something that isn't defined very well. At least I haven't seen a definition of that I like. And if you don't define that, then you're sort of just skipping over the fact that this is this statistical machine that outputs language. I'm not saying that it's not useful. It's just if you're doing this definition work, these things matters. So yeah, do with that as you like. I thought this was interesting. There were some points that I thought were pretty good, but a little bit sloppy. Right. Thank you so much for listening in to this. See you later.